Welcome to This is Concrete, a podcast where we speak with the people whose work revolves around concrete and coatings. Let's get to what you came for.
Hello, I'm Chad Gill, the host of the This is Concrete podcast, where I talk with leaders in facilities management, architecture, contracting, and more. This episode is brought to you by Concreate. Concreate is a concrete polishing and coatings company with nearly 20 years of experience working in commercial, industrial, and residential markets. So whether you need smooth transitions for warehouse traffic, a show-stopping lobby floor, or seamless concrete accent wall, we can provide the skill and imagination you need to make your concrete uncommon. So what are you waiting for? Visit us at thisisconcrete.com and learn more about Concreate today. So joining me today is Ike Casey. He's a returning guest. He's been here before on the podcast, and he has decades of experience working with contractors and construction associations. He's the current executive vice president of the ASA in Metro Washington. We're going to talk to him a little bit about some of the recent things that the American Subcontractor Association has been doing. So, Ike, thanks for coming on. I appreciate your time.
All right. It's a pleasure to be here, Chad.
So, how do you end up becoming the executive vice president of the ASA?
Well, it's actually executive director, but that's okay. I started when I was born. I climbed out of the womb, and my mother was working for NECA, the National Electrical Contractors Association, and my father was the chapter manager of the Carolinas chapter of NECA, National Electrical Contractors Association. So I grew up with it. The office was in my backyard, and my mother would spank me and tell me to get out of the office. And I would go to conventions, and I got to work at the registration desk and things like that. So I've done it all my life. I did teach school for 9 years, but I couldn't afford that. So I got out of that and became assistant manager of NECA. I took over the American Subcontractors of the Carolinas from my mother in the 80s. And then I moved to ASA National. Then I became the executive vice president of the Independent Electrical Contractors National Association. And then after that, 11 years there, I was the executive vice president of the Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling Contractors National Association. They took about 9 years of me, and I left there and bummed around for a while. Then Sheldon Shapiro with Shapiro and Duncan, some people know him. He died a couple of years ago, untimely death. But he and I were pretty close, and he said, "You got to take this job as ASA executive director." I said, "You don't want me to do that." And he wouldn't take no as an answer, so I've been here for 9 years now. So if you add all that up, I'm about 120 years old.
I was going to say, well, it helps when you start right out of the womb, though. So what is the, I know you and I worked on some stuff together recently and dealing with legislation. And I think that's some of the stuff that contractors don't understand and that associations do on their behalf and their members, but just, everybody kind of gets caught up in it. But can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I want to talk about associations for just a minute because people in business don't realize how important associations are to their business. They think, well, this legislation will get passed no matter what I do, or they think, somebody else is going to educate the workforce. I don't have to worry about that. But we're in a place now in the development of the construction industry where the subcontractors need to take a little higher position than they have the last 200 or 300, 400 years. I mean, you think about when construction started, you had a master builder who hired all the trades. And that really hasn't developed much since then. You now have the owner, you have the general contractor, and you have the subcontractors, subcontractors, and suppliers. And the farther down you go, the less power they have in the construction process. So it's really time now. I mean, we've been saying this for a long time, but it's time now to get the subcontractors of equal footing in the construction process. What we do at ASA, I break it down into 4 different areas: advocacy, education, information, and recognition. So we talked a little bit, you mentioned the advocacy. So the big thing going on right now is this pay if paid legislation. It passed in Virginia. It's the law in about, I think we're the 11th state out of the 50 that has this law. And, people are talking about it in Virginia, and they're talking about it throughout the DMV. We call the DMV, I guess your people know what that is, DC, Maryland, and Virginia. A lot of the other jurisdictions are talking about it because it's something that people are worried about. And I just want to mention on this call that the advocate for it for ASA was Mr. Chad Gill. We had some hearings on this, and we had to have someone come and speak to it. And nobody could have done a better job than Chad did, I'll tell you. He put the facts on the line, and he made people very aware of why subcontractors need to know they're going to get paid. And why don't you talk about the argument that you made, Chad? Because I think it was perfect, right on time, right on spot.
Well, it was just basically boiled down to the idea that the whole basis behind contracting is a contract. You say you're going to do a service, you perform that service, and then you expect to get paid for it. And what was happening was general contractors would go to an owner, the owner wouldn't pay, and then the subcontractor would be stuck on the hook with the money. And it does lead in some scenarios where general contractors, they don't have the amount of risk that the sub has. Maybe collectively they are exposed to a lot of risk, but individually. And so the scenario would always come down that, people said, well, if we have this in place, we're going to have to really vet our customers much more, much deeper, which then begs the question, well, why would you need to vet your customers much deeper if it doesn't make a difference? And they're like, well, we would be on the hook. Well, that's the key. And when you're playing with your money, it's important to you, but it wasn't quite as important when you're playing with the subcontractor's money. And it just put us at a real disadvantage. We already were funding these jobs for 30, 45 days, 60 days, some even longer. And, we're not building a building for ourselves. We're building it for an owner, so that's where the relationship should lie. But I had a hard time with the idea that, contractors will pay you if we get paid. I mean, I don't go to the grocery store and say, hey, I'm gonna get this milk, and as long as I get paid on my next job, I'll come back and pay you for it. That doesn't work for me.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think the general contractors that I've talked to since the bill passed seem to understand it. But we had a session yesterday with the Construction Financial Managers Association, and Lauren McLaughlin led the discussion. And there were general contractors and subcontractors in the room. And it was a really good discussion, but I had no arguments from the general contractors about, how it wouldn't work or why it wouldn't work. One thing to be aware of, though, is you need to look at that venue clause in your subcontract. So I think everybody knows what I'm talking about, but when you're reviewing your subcontract, and if anybody is a subcontractor and listening to this and doesn't carefully review their subcontract, then you either need to get out of business or call me up and let me get you to join ASA, because you're not running your business right. So you got to read those subcontracts. And the venue section says, if there are any issues, we're going to go by the laws of blank. And we've seen subcontracts that say, we're going to adjudicate this according to the laws of Alaska. Now, how would you like to be involved in that case? And there are even cases in DC where they have the venue, which is where the case will be heard, in Denmark. We've heard of one in Denmark, one in China, and one some other place. So you can imagine you have no chance in some of those cases if the case is heard in another country. So you really need to look more carefully at that now. Some of the I can think of 2 major GCs in our area that you would all know, but I won't mention their names, have in their contract that it'll all be adjudicated in Maryland. And Maryland does not have the pay if paid legislation right now, so that could affect your subcontract. So I hope that all the people listening that review subcontracts will pay a little more attention to that venue clause than they have in the past.
That's a good point. It's one of the things that brought me to the ASA, and in the very beginning was the Contractor Tip Sheet. It just talks about, it breaks it down. When you're trying to review commercial contracts and you're not a lawyer, you're not, you're a subcontractor, you're just trying to get your job done. You're tempted to want to sign that thing so you can get the job. And as long as you don't have any problems, you'll probably be fine. But once you have a problem, it can be crippling. And the biggest issue I always run into is, the good contractor and the bad contractor, they look exactly the same until you have a problem. So you don't really know who you're going to have. And it varies within companies too, as to who you deal with. And that tip sheet has been it's worth joining the ASA for, just get the tip sheet. But it's just a really good way to kind of go through and hit the highlights, because there's lots of clauses like the venue clause that most times you can get it changed. It just makes sense, handle the case wherever the job is typically the way it moves.
Well, we also have, if you go to our website, we have some resources on that. The national office has resources on its website, but our website is ASAMW.org. I hope that's clear. I've said that many times in the past and people haven't gotten it. But ASAMW.org. And to the right side of that website are some member resources, and one of them is the ASAMW Subcontract Addendum. And that's available to everybody, whether you're a member or not. And what we did was we took what we thought was kind of a one-sided subcontract that was favorable to subcontractors, and we met with general contractors and tried to make it fair. So we think it's fair. That's our mission. Our mission is better construction through fair construction. And so we developed this subcontract addendum, which, if a general contractor would accept it, you just attach it to the contract and say, this is, this supersedes the other provisions. And it's very fair. So it would be a good idea to try that with a new general contractor you're not familiar with, and see if they'll accept it. We've had some accept it, particularly new people that are from out of town tend to accept it more. You won't get your regulars, all the big guys in the area. You're not going to get them to accept it, but they will use it. They will use sections of it if you talk to them about it.
And
so that's
it's a great way to kind of start the conversation.
Yeah. So that's some of the things we do. And in order to try to develop this fairness that I'm talking about, we work with 20 general contractors. And again, this is on our website. I won't read them off to you right now, but it's probably covers a majority of the work that's in the DMV. I could name some generals that aren't on there, and we don't want them on there. And you can imagine why. But we have 20 of the ones that we think will listen to us and, will help us make the industry more fair. And so you can see those on our website. I think you can imagine who they are. If you think of a major general contractor, they're probably on the list. And so we have national general contractors and we have local general contractors, large and small, some that do, strictly commercial, some that do some high-rise residential. None of them do home building. We don't have home builders in ASA, but it's primarily commercial and multifamily construction. So that group, those general contractors are the ones that we talk to on a regular basis. We had a case recently where one was just not paying change orders. And, we went to that general contractor and talked to him about it. And there's really usually when change orders don't get paid, there's an owner problem. And so we were able to talk to them about that and raise that level of awareness that they have about their about their subcontractors getting paid on change orders that are, getting 30, 60, 90, well, not 30. They'd love to have 30, 90 to 120 days old. And it was a good learning experience on both sides. The general had some points and we had some points. And I think we came away with a lot more respect. So that's the kind of thing we do with general contractors. And, as an association, we're trying to help the subcontractors situation so that they can do better, so that, things are better for subcontractors than they have been.
What are the upcoming, what is your focus this year and that kind of thing for, I guess, probably the education side or the advocacy?
Well, we have a number of issues that we're going to address this year, but the primary one is change orders. We've been talking about them for years, and it just doesn't seem to get any better. I don't know how you feel about it, Chad, but people in my area up here around DC say it's worse. And so what do you think?
Or getting them justified?
Well, basically we're talking about payment, but really how long does it take you to get a change order approved? And then how long does it take to get paid?
And that goes down to some of the contract clauses too. When you sign a contract that says you're going to do the change order work before everybody agrees to a price, that undercuts all the leverage you have. You just don't have, once you eat a hamburger, it's not like they can repossess it. So, when you provide that service already, it's hard to get back into that. And so you've lost a lot of that leverage. Now, there are lien rights that you can apply and there's things like that, but that's all very long and extensive. The best that I have seen of getting change orders handled, one, is to be upfront and honest. Be real. Don't take a job with the intent of saying I'm going to make money off of the change orders and I'll lose on the main contract. It's a running joke in construction, but some people do operate that way, and that makes a bad situation. But the better documented it is, and the better informed, and phone calls just don't count for anything in these cases. You make a phone call and then you follow up with writing. And so that's, that over communication and documentation of everything leading up to and through the change order event, that's the best way to get it, because that's where you can set all the pricing zones. You can start to put all the history in it and make sure that everybody's agreeing to things. That speeds things along, and it gives the owner a place where they can look at and see a history of how this happened. And normally that makes things get paid faster, but nobody likes a change order, No,
and this general contractor said there's no way to expect payment before 4 months. And so this contractor asked us to do a survey, and we did one we have a bi-weekly newsletter. It's titled Ike's Thoughts, just because I wanted to make sure that people knew it was my opinion in a lot of cases and not the association's opinion. But we ask our members how long do they expect to wait for a change order to be approved, and when do they expect payment? And the realities are it's about 120 days. And the expectations are much shorter than that, but the reality is about 120 days. So we need to do something about that, because you're going to be financing all that work that you've done. You're expending so much energy that you could be using selling other jobs. And that's something we've got to change in construction. It can't keep going this way. It's not fair.
No, it's not. And there's lots of reasons behind it. I think that, in the day and age of technology and photographs and those kind of things, there's no reason. One of my favorite lines is always asked, and they're like, well, how long will it take to get paid? And I'll say, well, it'll take us as long to do it as it'll take you to pay us. So if you need me to do it in 10 days, then I need to get paid in 10 days. We'll give you the same amount of time. And what's amazing is they think it takes longer to get it approved than it takes you to price it. It's like, hey, I need you to start and go fix it. Well, let me price it. I need you to go ahead and do it first. No,
and I'm not an attorney, but I think your contract probably says you have to do that. If they tell you to proceed, you have to proceed.
That's what if you have that clause in there, yes. And we've also, and there's lots of, I tend to try and get most of mine done through humor. It's like, hey man, the guy's like, I can't get you a signed change order, but I need you to start. Well, that's no problem. We can take a check. A check. You write a check, and whatever I don't use, I'll get back to you, and I'll definitely have you an answer within 4 months. We could go that direction. I mean, that's the same thing, and people laugh about that. They're like, "Man, that's ridiculous." I'm like, but it's the same. It's the mirror image of what you're asking me to do, and so yeah, it's always interesting, but generally, people are good. And
I know we need to do a Chad's tip sheet on how to address change orders. So think about that. We'll put one together.
Yeah, I don't know, but I don't know. I got a lot of people that probably are a lot better at it than I am, but it's I'm trying to have fun at work too and enjoy my job. But it's if you can keep it from getting bad, I find that most times if the moment everybody starts pulling the contract out, that's when a job becomes not fun.
Yeah.
Better just to work together as much as you can. That doesn't mean you get over. It just means you're open.
But to continue with a lot of things we're going to do this year at ASA is helping the project managers do their jobs better, because we find that if the project manager's on top of claims and change orders and the scope and the scheduling, things go a lot better. So we do a lot. We're going to do a change claims program in a couple of weeks. As a matter of fact, it's already sold out. But that's the kind of thing we do. And every year we have a 6-week project managers workshop. And the value of that is we bring in people from our area, subcontractors, a couple of general contractors, and one attorney. But for those 6 weeks, you're hearing from general subcontractors who've been through it, who know how to deal with all the different issues that a project manager has to face. So we find that that's really an important part of the success of a business, is how well your project managers are trained in protecting your business.
For sure. And that, like you said, that comes down to just documentation out the wazoo. It's just how much, paper it to death, just to make sure you've got it. And photos. I mean, photos worth 1,000 words. It can be worth tens of thousands of dollars. And so it makes a big difference. But that's
we're gonna keep doing some things we also have a group called the Front Runners, which are primarily younger people, business development people, and project managers that just like to have fun. But they do have get-togethers about every month. We have our holiday party coming up. But the big thing I want to talk about before you kick me off is the subbies. Every year for the last 59, this will be our 60th subby coming up. So for 60 years, ASA has been recognizing the best general contractors, and particularly the individuals involved with the general contracting companies in our area. And so all the major general contractors will be there: Clark, Whiting Turner, Gilbang, Balfour Beatty, CBG, WCS, Wilson, you name them. All of them will be there, but particularly if they get nominated. But it's a really good event. It's a black tie event. It'll be February the 11th this year. I'm putting a plug in for it, but it will probably sell out. We've been selling out. We're going to have to start having it at the stadium, I guess. But right now, we have it at the McLean Hilton, and we can take up to 500 people. So we expect to pretty much fill it out. And it's a great event because we recognize the superintendents, the GC's superintendents, the GC's project manager, the GC's group leader. We're talking about individuals here that do the best job of running the jobs. And when they get that recognition, other people want to look up and say, well, why did they get it and I didn't get it? And that's where we start educating people on what it takes to be fair to sub.
That's a good program. No, and I think it's a wise move. It highlights the people that are doing a good job, and that's the easiest way to set the tone for the way things are supposed to be going. It's a whole lot better. That's getting them with honey instead of vinegar. A better approach.
That's the Chad Gill approach, right?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I have my vinegar moments. I'm sure, and probably more than I want to admit to, but we tried the other way first. Well, that's awesome. I really appreciate it, Ike, and hopefully we can continue to work on some more stuff together and get some more people to kind of come towards it. I think it's a great asset what you do. I think the resources you have are easily worth the expense, and they've been a big help to both me and my company. So that's been fantastic. So I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Chad, and thanks for all you do for the industry too.
No problem. I'll do it. And the last thing I would say is don't play golf with Ike because you're just not going to win. Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to This is Concrete. We look forward to you joining us next time. Be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.